Hello TCS viewers, it is Chris Niccolls here again for the camera store, and today we are going to look at the brand new Sony RX10. Now, I'm not a big fan of super zooms and bridge cameras personally, but this camera is very, very different. It's very unique. We are going to talk about that here in just a bit. We're coming to you from a beautiful outdoor location. We're going to put this camera through its paces. Not only is the RX10 a unique camera for shooting stills, it is also an exceptional video camera, which is why we are shooting this entire video on the RX10 as well. Come with us, we're going to check it out. Now, it's funny because when you look at the RX10, it looks like a super zoom camera. It smells like a super zoom camera. It even feels like one. You'd be forgiven for thinking that. I mean, it's almost like an FZ200 from Panasonic, but it's actually a very different beast altogether. This lens actually does not have that big a zoom range. We're talking roughly an 8x zoom, 24 to 200 millimeters. You're not gonna get that huge 35, 45, 50 times kind of expanse. But what you're trading that smaller zoom range for is a big sensor. We got the same 1-inch sensor that you're gonna find in the Sony RX100 series of camera. That means exceptionally good image quality. It also means for video, some interesting things which we're going to talk about in just a bit too. You know, it's almost like Sony took something like the Panasonic FZ200 with its 2.8 lens and then something like the RX100, those Japanese engineers stuck them together, and well, here's a reenactment of what you get. Panasonic FZ200, I love that 2.8 lens of yours. Yeah, you do, baby. I love that big sensor. I want a piece of that RX100. Yeah, you do. Oh, you're the best. Our parent companies will never understand our love. You know, there are some nice positives with the RX10. I mean, first off, hit the function menu, all your controls are there. I can bring up histogram live. I mean, the camera's made very well. The dials are in good places. It's comfortable to hold. So Sony did a really nice job making a handsome camera and an easy camera to use and navigate. I also like on this lens, the macro capability is quite impressive, and you don't have to go looking for a macro focus or macro switch. You just go in and the camera focuses really close, as you can see here. So very, very nice, very, very nicely designed. Yeah, you know, it would be nice to get just a little bit closer. 200 millimeters, not bad, but a super zoom would get right in on those mountains, no problem. So I hope you guys like lots of detail shots today. Did I mention that the RX10 is a fantastic macro camera? I'm shooting Calgary here, not the city, but the word, and it's about, oh, I don't know, 3 inches wide. I'm going to shoot this here at 200 millimeters and 24 just to give you folks at home a reference for how close you can get. But even at 200, I get a nice close-up capability. I can then zoom to 24, get right in there, cut my working distance down, and change the perspective dramatically. But as you can see, the camera still does a very similar macro capability. You know, the other thing about the zoom, which is nice, electronic zoom, I can have it either as a smooth stepless zoom, or I can set it to a stepped zoom just to stop at my traditional focal lengths, 100, 70, 50, 35, 24, you know, that kind of stuff. Works really nicely. Now, here's something I cannot reiterate enough about the RX10. Sony has given you so many features, a lot of capabilities, and a lot of really nice touches, but rather than get confusing, they've made the camera streamlined and easy to use. I like the exposure comp button. It's in a great position for your thumb. You've got a custom button right above it. You've got an LCD panel on top. Now, that is rare to find on a compact camera, but it's all a nice kind of luxurious touch. This aperture ring on this lens is so smooth. 2.8 to f16, but little click on the bottom and now you get a stepped click stop aperture. I mean, this stuff is beautiful. It's just luxury, luxury, luxury. Great lens as well. Zeiss lens, Vario sonar, 2.8 maximum aperture all the way through its range. All right, so let's get right in here and look at some of these back controls. A pretty standard layout, menu and movie buttons dedicated at the top. You've got exposure lock. You've got the function button that you can set up and customize. But the control dials, honestly, this is one thing I don't like so much about the RX10. They work, but this top one especially is too small, too slippery. I can run my thumb across it and not even make it move. I don't like that. And then the rotating dial on the back lower down, I do like that I can customize the sort of north, east, south, west controls. It's especially nice if you're doing things like movie mode. You can set it up to do levels and different colors and neutral density filter, things like that. That's a nice touch. But again, a little hard to turn, doesn't always rotate. I wish they'd make these things a little bit more grippy. Now to round it all out, you also get a selectable autofocusing switch. They're dynamic manual focus, single and continuous. This camera's gonna burst out 10 frames per second at the full 20 megapixels. Pretty incredible. You even get another toggle switch at the front for zooming. It's a little bit of a slower, more controlled one with pressure sensitivity. You even get a threaded cable release for doing your release timer stuff. This camera is definitely luxurious. Standard W series battery, like you'd find in a lot of the NEX cameras, will give you about 400 shots. So you get a nice viewfinder here, nothing amazing, but I will say this, it updates very, very quickly, nice fast refresh, pretty good eye relief too if you need it. So overall, 1.4 million dots, not bad. All right, so again, it's funny, you know, I'm carrying a camera which I expect could go right in there and shoot really tightly. We've got some birds here. As you can see with the photo, yeah, I mean, we get an okay shot, but we're just not getting very close. 200 millimeters really isn't that far when you're expecting it in a camera like this. That being said, we do have the 1-inch sensor, 20 megapixels from Sony that they use in the RX series. And you know, we love the sensor. They do a really, really good job with this one. You could certainly crop, and the photos are sharp. It's a great lens that way. So a couple of very important things to remember when you're in the Weaselhead area here. First off, you're not going to find any horses. Second, you will find unexploded ordnance, so be very careful when you're out here. It looks like a nice place to stroll, but it's quite exciting. Interesting that Calgary's drinking water used to be where we fired bombs and mortars and grenades. You know, in a camera like this, again, as to be expected, the RX10 just seems to have the best of everything. I mean, the camera focus is great. We'll do a test here nice and close and then far. Listen to this. No issues, grabs onto it nice, very responsive. I will say this, it is nice to have 24 millimeters on a camera like this. So I just want to do a little bit of an interesting comparison here with depth of field. You know, what's unique about this is we're getting a 1-inch sensor, which is fairly big, but we're getting it with a 2.8 aperture at longer telephoto ranges. I'm going to shoot a photo here at the 200 millimeter equivalent here, 2.8. We should get fairly good thin depth of field. And as you can see, the RX10 does deliver very nice soft out of focus areas. Now I want to compare that against a Canon 70D with the 18-135 at 135. We'll be getting very, very similar frames, very similar focal lengths, and at 5.6, a Canon 70D gives us a similar rendition. So yeah, having 2.8 on the RX10, it's a nice feature, especially in low light. As far as depth of field goes, you can get fairly moderate depth of field, something like you'd expect on a traditional SLR in that sort of mid-aperture range. But again, it's not going to touch a full sensor, and it's not going to touch it at the wider apertures. So we're doing our ISO ramp up here, and again, we've seen this sensor before in cameras like the RX100. Now the RX10 has this new Bionz X processor, and that should give us a little bit more low light performance. We certainly saw that when we did the A7 and A7R. Now, I would say this, you know, it's good. 1600, you do notice softness already. It's a 1-inch sensor. It's not going to compete with SLRs, but overall, folks, very impressive. You can push it to 12,800, but it's going to be mushy, mushy, mushy. Still, you know, for a camera like this, it'll blow away things like FZ 200s, Canon SX50s, no problem. Sensor size is giving us the advantage here. All right, so again, we've got Sony's classic tilty screen. You know, it only goes vertical, not side to side, but in a situation like this, it's still very handy. All right, now of course there's another very, very interesting feature about the RX10, and that is its video capabilities. So Jordan, you want to come back here? We'll talk about it.
Hey guys, it's Jordan, the video guy, coming out from behind the camera again. Chris is behind it on the RX10. Hopefully everything is in focus for a change. But I really enjoyed shooting with the RX. I get this wonderful stepless aperture on it, so I can smoothly adjust exposure. It's really nice. I also have built-in ND filters, so I don't have to pack that around as well, although it's just one filter. Now I also get a mic input, I get a headphone jack, and I get all the nice stuff from the A7. Just touch of a button, I can bring up my audio controls, zebras. I've got a histogram right there. It's really intuitive to shoot. Feels just like I'm working with a video camera. But the big advantage is the lens on this thing. Getting a 24-200 that's a constant f2.8 means I don't ever have to compensate if I zoom in a little bit. My exposure will be maintained. It's really nice to work with, and it's crazy sharp. So what about the quality of this? Well, the RX10 does something really interesting, actually. What it does is subsample the entire sensor as opposed to line skipping or anything like that. And what that means is we get very, very sharp video off of it. Now there is a concern with that though. This shoots to AVC HD, which is a little bit of an outdated codec now, I'd say. Anytime I'm shooting it at smaller apertures, really detailed shots, especially if I pan the camera, all that fine detail just turns into mush, and it's all because of that codec. Now, Sony has a workaround for that. They give you a clean HDMI out on this, so I could send it out to something like an Atomos Ninja, but they chose to use the micro HDMI port, the worst of all ports ever devised by man. I mean, if you even breathe on that thing, it'll fall right out at the drop of a hat. So how does the RX10 stack up as a video camera? I mean, it does have those codec issues, but on the whole, having that beautiful lens and all those quick access features in one small body is really nice. And in a lot of ways, I'd prefer bringing this around to the GH3 because all I need is this one built-in lens will handle everything. And with the sensor size on it, it's really close to 16mm film, so I get that classic Super 16 look to the image. And it's a very compelling camera. I just really wish they'd do something to address the codec issues in it.
All right, guys, so Sony RX10 final thoughts, here we go. It is certainly a very well-built camera with incredibly high capabilities. Everything that it does really, really, really well. I know you guys will be worried about the price point. $1,400 Canadian makes this camera compete price-wise with a lot of high-end DSLR packages. So who is this camera for? You know, I could see this being a fantastic high-end family camera, for example. Maybe you want the quality of an SLR, you want the controls, you want good video capability, but you don't want to mess about with extra lenses and extra bulk and carrying all that around. This can be a great choice. It's a great backup camera for a DSLR user if you want good capabilities, but you don't want to carry a lot of heavy gear. And as a video camera, you got to remember that this does represent good value. Think about it. You got a lot of camcorders on the market in the $1,000 to $1,500 range, and this camera will beat the crap out of them. You're getting a bigger sensor, you're getting a great lens with the constant 2.8 aperture, and it all has really, really nice control with good audio inputs. So this camera can also replace and be a great camcorder unit. I could see people who like GH3s also liking something like this. It does represent a very complete package, and it again does it really well. If you're looking for all that in one way, the RX10 is a great way to go. Check this out, folks. Thanks very much for joining us, and we'll see you guys soon.